A Tale of Three Stephanians, written by K. Natwar Singh. St. Stephen's College, Delhi, has the distinction of producing two presidents, that is, Fakhruddin Ali Ahmad, India, and Zia-ul-Haq, Pakistan. I had much to do with the latter when I was ambassador to Pakistan in the early 1980s. The St. Stephen's link helped me to establish a working rapport with him. This was strictly confined to non-political, non-official matters. As I have said elsewhere, the line dividing the formal and the informal was clearly drawn by both sides. Islamabad is among the most coveted posts in Indian Foreign Service. It is also the most challenging and hugely important. The Indian ambassador or High Commissioner to Pakistan falls in a special category. He is under intense round-the-clock surveillance. In Islamabad, his contacts with non-establishment Pakistanis are minimal. That is not so in Lahore or Karachi, which are both lively, immensely hospitable, culturally rich, exuberant. Lahore is macho, Karachi is more cosmopolitan. In their different ways, both are warm-hearted. Karachi, because of the Muhajirs, is far more welcoming to Indian diplomats and visitors. Though the architecture in Karachi is ghastly, parts of Lahore remained one of old Delhi. Both cities consider Islamabad an upstart half city with no proper place in history. President Zia-ul-Haq was a genius when it comes to public relations. Even the humblest Indian was treated as a VIP and seldom denied an audience. When it came to India-Pak relations, he was a different man. And this was the side that really mattered. He never missed an opportunity to play the Kashmir card. It was old that, and I knew how to deal with it. In 1981, St. Stephen's College was to celebrate its centenary. President Zia-ul-Haq wished to be in Delhi for the occasion. Mrs. Indira Gandhi was not keen on such a visit. Not to slip on a PR opportunity, he telephoned the college principal Rajpal on 1st February 1981, the exact centenary date. Towards the latter half of 1980, I had requested the President to write an article for the centenary issue of the college magazine, the Stephanian. He had really agreed. After several reminders, he produced one which reached just in time for the deadline. On my return to Islamabad after attending the centenary function, I presented to President Jia a copy of the Stephanian which carried his article. A few days later, he sent for me. Nator Sahib, I want you to do me a favor. This was most unusual. I was caught unawares and produced a nervous smile. He asked me to relax, adding, I am not asking for Kashmir. He told me that he had read an article by Augustine Paul in the college magazine. I had not read it. Paul, in his article, had recalled his sharing a room with President Zia-ul-Haq in college hostel in the early 1940s. He had done better than the president in the officers training course at college and ruefully wrote, in spite of my above achievement in the OTC, it is a typical irony of fate that it was to be Jia who later opted for the army and has risen to his present position, whereas I have to derive satisfaction from my sedentary job as an officer in the Indian Foreign Service. The president handed me a letter addressed to Augustine Paul, also an autographed photo of himself. He asked me to forward these to Paul. It took me a while to locate him. He was serving as second secretary in the Indian Embassy in Bangkok. After a few weeks, the president inquired if I had forwarded his letter and photograph to Paul. He had not heard from him. Fancy a busy head of a state keeping track of so insignificant an epistolary exercise. I assured him that I would immediately find out why Paul had not written to thank him. I asked Paul for an explanation. Here one sees the law of unintended consequences working with a vengeance. It was a cruel experience for the innocent Paul. As a rule-abiding foreign service officer, he had informed his superiors in the embassy that he had received a letter and an autographed photo from President of Pakistan. The full force of the suspicious wrath of the unimaginative intelligence agencies all but pulverized Paul. How long had he been corresponding with the president? Where did he get to know him? Why should the head of an unfriendly state write to a second secretary in the Indian Embassy in Thailand? It took some effort on my part to get the man off the bureaucratic nose. In those times, so much suspicion infected both sides that it nearly ruined a man's career. Eventually, Paul sent a correct and respectful letter of thanks to President Zia-ul-Haq. He implored me to request President Zia to forget him and never write to him. When I related the incident to the President of Pakistan, he was both amused and distressed. Thank you for listening. Now some of the words and their meanings. I was ambassador to Pakistan in the early 1980s. The St. Stephen's link helped me to establish a working rapport with General Zia-ul-Haq. Rapport means a friendly relationship. a good understanding of someone and an ability to communicate with him. Islamabad is among the most coveted posts in the Indian Foreign Service. Coveted, COVETED. Coveted means strongly desired by many. In Islamabad, his contacts with non-establishment Pakistanis are minimal. Minimal spelling MINIMAL. Minimal means very small. That is not so in Lahore or Karachi, which are both lively, immensely hospitable, culturally rich, and exuberant. Hospitable means friendly and welcoming to guests and visitors. Exuberant, EXUBERANT. Exuberant means full of energy and excitement. Lahore is macho. Karachi is more cosmopolitan. Macho means strong and powerful, typical to a manpower. Cosmopolitan, COSMOPOLITAN. Cosmopolitan means containing people from all over world. A few days later, General Zia-ul-Haq sent for me. Nator Sahib, I want you to do me a favor. This was most unusual. I was caught unawares and produced a nervous smile. Unawares means caught suddenly and unexpectedly without any warning. Augustine Paul, in his article, had recalled his sharing a room with President Zia-ul-Haq in the college hostel in the early 1940s. He had done better than the president in the officers' training course at college and ruefully wrote. Ruefully means in a way that shows you are feeling sorry and wishing that something had not happened. In spite of my above achievement in the OTC, it is a typical irony of fate that it was to be Zia who later opted for the army and has risen to his present position, whereas I have to derive satisfaction from a sedentary job as an officer in the Indian Foreign Service. Sedentary means involving a lot of sitting down, not active. Fancy a busy head of state keeping track of so insignificant an epistolary exercise. Epistolary means in the form of letters. Written, a literary work in the form of letters. Here one sees the law of unintended consequences working with a vengeance. With a vengeance means with great force. The full force of the suspicious wrath of the unimaginative intelligence agencies all but pulverized Mr. Paul. Pulverize means to crush something until it becomes powder or soft. In those times, so much suspicion infected both sides that it nearly ruined a man's career. Eventually, Mr. Paul sent a correct and respectful letter of thanks to President Zia-ul-Haq. He implored me to request President Zia to forget him and never to write to him. Implore means to ask someone to do or not to do something in a very sincere, emotional and determined way. Thank you very much.